Without further ado, everyone, thank you for coming to JawnCon. I've got the wonderful Heidi Potter here for you and your entertainment purposes. Give her a big round of applause. Tell her she's doing awesome. She is. The Septibus says so. And
what did you just say? I missed that.
Oh, the Septibus said you're doing awesome. Oh, it already scrolled past. I can make it say it again.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Thank you, Heidi.
All right. Thank you. First things first, for those of you standing in the back, there are actually seats. There's plenty of seats for you to sit every other one and pretend like you don't like each other. So come sit down if you want to. Just saying, you don't have to stand.
It's not a Gallagher concert.
That you know of.
It might get there. I'm not actually sure. So we're going to talk about words today, in case you haven't figured that out. And we're going to do that using one of my favorite foils and one of my favorite games called Codenames. So who here has played Codenames? Right? So we're going to play today. I'm going to give you a quick little primer on how to play. But first of all, Codenames is a game about words, right? And words are important. They're kind of all of these things. If I turn around, you can't hear me. Lav mic. Turn with the lav mic, Heidi. Okay, so this is what I teach my speakers at JawnCon. I do this like little training session for them, and I always tell them not to choose the lav mic, because what happens when you turn your head, all of a sudden nobody can hear you, right? So I just broke one of my own cardinal rules by turning my head away from the lav mic. Now you all know a trick, right? So you turn your body with the mic. So words for 7, which will make sense in a second as I explain the rules of the game. But we're going to talk about words. Words mean all these things up here on the board. But Codenames is a game about words. Codenames is a wonderful game. I love it. I have, dare I say, well over 1,000 hours playing this game. I've dragged a lot of people in this room into playing this game with me. They probably have at least 500 hours playing this game with me. We play every week, mostly on Sunday nights for about 3 hours every week. So thank you, you Codenames people in the room. It's a game, there's 2 teams. There's a red team and a blue team. There's a grid of cards. I'll show you that in a second. And it's all words. There's another grid that corresponds with the grid of words. And that grid has some red squares, some blue squares, and some tan squares, and a single black square. So there's a red team and a blue team. There's a red code giver and a blue code giver. The blue code giver is trying to get the blue team to guess the blue cards. The red code giver is trying to get the red team to guess the red cards, right? So this will all make sense in a second. The way you do that is the code giver gives a single code clue followed by a number. That number is how many words in the grid that they think their code applies to. All right, so you ready to try this? Okay, we're going to play blue team because I am always blue. That's rule number 1. Heidi is always blue. If you screw that up after how many hours I've played this game, I will give you the wrong clues to the wrong words, and we'll just all lose. So this is why Heidi is always blue. All right, so we're going to play, provided I actually click the right thing on my screen. All right, so here's our board, and I've made these really easy on purpose, so you will not get these wrong. But the clue is school for 3. Now the way we play this when we can't actually, normally when you play it on the table in front of you, you touch the card. The way we're going to play it here is you can just call it out, but you're going to say and you can confer, you probably should confer with your teammates, which is all of you. This is interactive. But the way you do it, once you decide, is you're going to say the word and then you're going to say final answer. That'll let me know that you as a team have made a final decision. Okay, you Codenames people in the room, help them out, okay?
So she said school for 3.
I said school for 3.
So high school makes sense.
Middle school also makes sense.
That's my favorite school.
And school bus.
John is at a university. So do y'all want to knock out high off the board?
Right.
Yep.
So someone should say
High school, final answer. Kid mittens.
Nope, I did the wrong one. Oh. Damn it. It's because I can't read and my glasses are dirty. which I'm going to hand to my husband to clean. Also, can I just tell you a quick story while you're looking at all of these? As I was going through my slides this morning, I said, Bruce, could you just look at them and make sure I haven't missed anything? And he's sitting there looking at my slides, and I'm watching him, and he's hitting this button on my keyboard, and I'm watching my slides systematically disappear. And I look at him and I go, what the fuck, are you deleting my presentation? And his eyes get really big and he's like, yes. And I'm like, Bruce, and he's like, I know, I'm fixing it. It was really funny. And it was fixable. And obviously, here's my presentation. Thank you for making me able to read now. All right, so obviously I gave away the other answer. Would you like to say it? Okay, so now I'm gonna click here, and okay, and the last one, anybody? Beth? All right, so. You did it, I'm so proud. So we now have played our first round of code names. All right, so school words. All right, so this is kind of my soft pitch at a Who Am I slide. I'm Heidi, I do stuff. Maybe some of you know some of that stuff, but that's not really why. It's really unrelated to why I'm here. These are more things that have happened in my life that have led me to this presentation. I like words a lot. I'm a collector of words. This kind of started in elementary school. I went to one of those schools where they forced you to memorize a lot of poems like every 2 weeks, and then we had to stand up and recite those poems. I don't remember many of them now, but we did a lot of that. That was up in Juneau, Alaska. My school was very small, and I think this was a form of relative torture because we did it all the time. But it introduced like a love of language and a love of reading and a love of, well, words. I also started reading. Actually, I should go back. Even before that, I actually don't remember learning how to read. I read at such a young age that is not a part of my memory. I just have no memory of learning that. So I was the kid in kindergarten who was reading, these big fat chapter books while everybody else was looking at golden books. That's neither here nor there, but whatever. In middle school, I took a general language course. This is before you took French or Spanish. It was the class before that. And I got fascinated, not actually by language, but by the fact that other things happened in different languages. And so, like sneezing. So I put a link up here. You guys can look at it later. I'm sure the slides will get posted somewhere. But sneezing in different languages fascinated me. So I got caught up in this whole concept of not just words, but that other things could happen around the world. Things like just the sounds that people make or how we refer to things that happen in our daily lives. And that was with Pat Spence. I actually went then with Pat. We traveled to New Caledonia. I studied French there for a month when I was in 8th grade, or between 8th grade and 9th grade. I also won a contest when I was in the 8th grade of Alaska's most promising young author. I got to go on a big trip and present my written work. That's the last thing I ever won, so went nowhere after that, just to be clear. Attended JawnCon0x1 Center for Talented Youth. I studied English and Literature. It's really awesome. I went to California for 2 summers in a row. I went to Brain Camp, that's what we called it. And then in high school, I took this really awesome course, which was the best SAT prep you could ever do. It's called What Are Words Worth? It's about the Latin and Greek roots of all English, or what's now traditionally English language, of our language. But it was SAT prep, right? So that was really cool. So what does all of that do? Why does that qualify me to be up here? It doesn't. I'm just telling you this. Why am I really here? Oops, Bruce, you screwed up my slides. Okay. Well, I'm really here. Okay. You messed up my next slide. That's okay. It's all right. We were looking at my slides and we deleted them, and then we ruined my cadence when we brought them back, but that's okay. Really quick, I do love words. I collect words, and the real trick for this is they were kind of all supposed to splash up as we were going, but I have so many words around my house that my friends tease me about these, so just check it out really fast. This is the Scrabble board that is taller than I am. It's in my dining room. We're going to come back to some of these later on in the talk. This is a quote. It's really impossible to see. This is Bob Dylan's Forever Young, right? Is that the name of the song? These are all just things hanging around my house. When I tell you I collect words, it's really not like, it's not like walking into a word store or anything like that. They all have meaning. They're all someplace in particular in my house. But it's a thing. So, okay, so why am I really here? I'm sorry that I'm bending over, but the podium's down here, and while I am short, I am not quite like, this short. I've done a thing. Oh my God. I'm just gonna stick this back in my pocket really quick. 1 second, please. Maybe? Okay, we're good. I'm here because of this guy. So when Russ invited me to be here, I was first kind of flattered and then mortified, and then got really kind of nervous. This was in a span of about 30 minutes. And so I wrote him back and I said, cool, what do you want me to talk about? Why me and what do you want me to say? And he said, well, Heidi, I want you here because everything you say or everything you tell me is gold. And I went, cool, and then I felt really good about myself. I was like, I like that. That's really cool, I like that. So, but then, like another 30, 40 minutes went by and I was like, what do I say to Russ? And so I went looking through my history. And y'all, it's not good. It looks kind of like this. Like that, and like that, and like that, and it's so bad I'm not even going to leave it on the screen. I had to blur that because I can't show it to you. And so when Russ says everything you say is gold, what he really means is everything you say is gold. Right? So, yeah, I didn't feel, then I got really nervous again, and I was like, all right, I have no idea what I'm going to do up here, but I just wanted to say thanks for inviting me and really putting me on the spot about what I was going to say when I give this talk about words, right? Like, I didn't know what I was going to do once I got up here, but it really was the inspiration. Everything I say is gold, and so I was like, well, I don't know about the things I say, but certainly the things that other people have said to me have been important, right? But on that note, there are some other things we're not going to talk about. So we're not going to talk about the actual exchanges that Russ and I have had. We're not talking about that. We're also not going to be talking about grammar or spelling, obviously. That was really funny when I typed that line and made a typo. I didn't correct it because it just made me giggle. We're not going to talk about any really great speeches, poetry, books, any more than we already have, TV, movies, music, that kind of thing. But in case you're curious, I did leave you some of my favorites for later if you want to go back and look. I really highly recommend that first one if you've never seen it. That's, what's his name, Steve Almond's thing about Toto in Africa. If you've never seen that, go Google it the minute this is over. Well, I mean, be polite, wait till the other talks are over, and then go Google it. It's amazing. I've pretty much made, if you know me, I've made you watch it. So it's one of my favorite things ever. Why is that man down in Africa and why is he waiting for that girl? We have no idea. But obviously, so words mean stuff. So this is a phrase that P.W. Crack's one of his former bosses used to say when I was describing to him what I was going to do with this talk. He was like, yeah, and he kept saying, that's what she used to say at work, like words mean stuff. And the whole point, I mean, it's important, words mean stuff. And the whole point was that you need to use your words with intention, and you need to choose your words carefully. So some real life examples of this, and hopefully you're all familiar with these concepts and why it's important, right? But let's talk about, in like a con context, we can talk about like a CFP, or maybe job descriptions. In those examples, and this is true like of the ShmooCon CFP, and then today when we're running our businesses, when we write our job descriptions, if you are being overly prescriptive, if you're not careful with your language choices, you automatically rule out classes of people, and you can limit your applications, right? The people who are applying. Specifically when it comes to minority groups who might want to participate in whatever you're offering. This shows up when you use things like masculine words, and typically is the case where you're defaulting to, and we all do this, right? So some examples of those words. The one that I think there's some really obvious ones. Dominate might be a real big example of a masculine word, but some ones you might not think of. Independent, that has masculine tones to it, but it may not be one that you kind of overtly think of as a masculine word. In our particular arena, defend. Defend is an appropriate word to use in the right context, but isn't super appropriate outside of a particular context, right? Just equally feminine words. Dear God, avoid the word sensitive. Like, let's just not go there. But trust, again, contextually probably okay, but overall, not a great word to use. Committed, honest, have feminine connotations, right? Again, in context, maybe okay, but these are things you need to be thinking about. Being overly prescriptive in a job description can, again, limit the applicants. Don't put it in there unless it's something you absolutely 100% absolutely have to have coming in the gate. If it's something that can be trained against, you probably don't necessarily need to list it in the job application. And what the evidence shows is that the minority applicants will tend to feel like, oh, I can't apply for that if I don't know it 100%. Even if they know it 90% or 80%, you often won't see them applying because it's just not the trend that they see. So think about that. Badly written policies and how they impact the workspace. Here's another place where using or choosing words with intent is really important. Just some high-level examples here include not using acronyms in your policies, right? And if you're not spelling those out, or at least have a list somewhere or something that explains that, your policies become unreadable or you can't understand them. The other examples that I have for you here, like in a kind of sense, a code of conduct. The one that I always laugh at is if you get overly prescriptive in a code of conduct, the response you get is, well, you didn't tell me I couldn't do that. Right? I mean, don't even get me started. I've run up against that one a few times. It doesn't really work when you get that response, but people do try to pull that one over on you. This is one maybe some of you have run into. Not a space I live in, but some of you do. All confidential information must be marked confidential. That gets complicated, right? Let you think about the kind of recursiveness of that one for a minute. We reverted to the one.
Yeah,
it's gonna.
I fucked up the slides real good.
Bruce fucked up the slides again. We're gonna show something I didn't intend to show, but we're just gonna show it anyway, and then I'm gonna have to do this a little differently. I'm gonna come back to policies with this image that I was not supposed to be in the slide. And then this last one, this arguments, like you all know how this works, right? I'm sorry versus like I'm sorry, but. Yeah, one of those means something and one of them doesn't. Okay, now here's this image. Here's an example of a really badly written policy. And this is even the small, you went back so far, this is the small version.
Yeah.
In the state of Missouri, breaks are not mandatory. We give them to help control labor. We don't have them to let you work any amount of time before we cut the floor. There is no guideline in Missouri. With that being said, we do have to give 15-year-old breaks. So I need everyone to understand we are short-staffed, so lay off about the breaks. If we can give you a break, we will, but if we can't, stop the attitude. From this week's schedule, there will be no set schedule for anyone.
Way to go, Kimberly.
Kimberly's a great person. Anyway, thanks for the laughs. She's never allowed to touch my slides again. Anyway, all right, so we'll just move on. Anyway, so words matter. Words have energy and power. They can build you up. They can educate, they can comfort, they can excite, they can motivate and heal. But obviously they can cause a lot of pain too. And in this age, obviously we deal with misinformation, disinformation, fake news, right? But if used right, they can break down community, but they can also build community. And in my case, it's literally quite literal because I use the foil of code names all the time to help build a community. I bring this game with me everywhere I go, sit down, and I use it to invite new people in, to meet new people, you do it by playing a game. One little key thing though, I just want to point out, and I'm just going to remove it because it drives me nuts. I don't play this game with a timer, so I'm going to take it out of the picture because that's rule number 1. We do not play code games with a timer. Yeah, so they're all rule number 1. They're equally important. They are equally important. Okay. All right. Phrasing for 5, and those of you in the audience who recognize some of these will already start to giggle. This photo, about this time last year, I took a group of folks and I walked them across the state of Rhode Island because I'm crazy and I like to do weird things. And as we were walking, I do the thing that I do and I started to write down the funny things people were saying. So these were 2 of the phrases that came up. The answer to that first question is no. Okay, it was not enough, right? It was nowhere near enough. And then the second phrase there, we're going to come back to that actually in just a second. But first, we are going to play a game. The clue is wrong. For 3.
Can you spell it?
WRONG.
All right. I heard run, R-U-N.
Let's start with A.
Like that.
Wrong lead.
All.
Is that just for, wait.
All right, so I'm hearing it, but I need to hear, in order for me to click it, I need to hear the appropriate.
Final answer.
All right, so you did it. Congratulations. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about when words go wrong. And hearkening back to the title of my presentation, we're going to start with make a whole. So I really hate this phrase, okay? I mean, I hate this phrase. I'm trying really hard not to say it, but I'm sorry. To be fair, I understand that this has its origins in the military and in those environments, in that environment, particularly the Navy, this phrase does make sense. If you were to shout on a Navy ship or in a submarine or something like that, make a hole, it actually does make sense. What are they going to do? You're in a confined hallway, people are going to hug the walls, and you can make your way through, crowded space, right? However, in other environments, such as ShmooCon, if you're trying to move through a crowd and you shout or say, make a hole, and you're not in a hallway or in a space where it makes sense to move, in a certain direction, it does not work. In fact, what happens is the people on this side go this way, the people on this side go this way, and you just end up in the exact same situation. I've seen this time and time again. You end up in the exact same situation that you started in. Or people just stop and turn around and look at you because they don't know what they want, what you want them to do. And so I've basically forbidden my con staff from using this phrase unless it is followed by further instructions. Make a hole, please step to the right. Make a hole, please step to the left. Further instruction is needed. It just confuses the moment, and I don't like this phrase at all. So again, understand its origins, understand in certain particular situations it might work, but in general, this is not a phrase I am fond of. And so you can understand one of the funny phrases then back on that previous photo was, there's a hole, step to the right. That was people on the trip who know me very well poking a little fun at me as we were making our way down this, one of the trail paths, and it had all these like water holes. I mean, they were literally like these I wouldn't even call them puddles, they were like mini lakes. And so we were having to like traverse around them, and it was, I don't know, probably I felt like it added a mile to our trek, but really didn't, but that's what it felt like. Okay, so this is a very, very soft example, but you saw this picture of this sign very back at the beginning, and I bought this sign off of eBay, and I didn't even buy it because my kids are whiners. If you've met my kids, like, I don't know, I got blessed with the best kids in the world. They don't do this, really, not much. I bought this sign because it was listed on eBay as a sign for horse lovers. And I just couldn't pass it up. She's like, this is a sign for horse lovers. And I was like, it says no whining. She really thought it said no whinnying. And she was marketing to horse lovers the whole entire time she was selling it. And I was like, oh, you poor soul, I'll buy it. I don't know. I just, you know, I'll always bid on the thing that nobody's bid on, you know? Like, I'm like, not on eBay, that would be bad. But if I, like an in-person auction, I'm like, that really ugly piece of art. Look, honey, we own it now, you know? True story. Several times over. Okay. I actually pulled this off this morning as well. This one was told to me just a couple days ago by a friend, and she was at work, and the girl who sits next to her, lady who sits next to her, and the gentleman who then sits, you know, 2 desks over. Apparently he was eating something sort of smelly. Okay, I don't know what it was, but something sort of smelly, and he was feeling sort of self-conscious about it. And this guy is like apparently very straight, and I'm gonna look. I promised to see if he was here, because apparently he'll turn bright red if I tell the story, but I don't know. Very straight and narrow, and was kind of very embarrassed about the odor emanating from his lunch. And the other woman, you know, was sitting next to him, and he turned to her and said, instead of asking, you know, like, is this bothering you or does this smell bad? He asked her, is this a turnoff? And she didn't say anything, she just kind of shook her head and said no. But apparently several hours later, you know, like they were all standing around the copy machine or something, or whatever people do when they go to work. I don't know, I work at home. And they were talking about it, and she turned to Jackie, because Jackie's the one that told me the story, for those of you who know Jackie, and said, yeah, well, you know, I don't know, Steve, earlier I was trying to find out what my turn-ons were. You know, like, that's not a good thing to say at work, right? Is this a turn-off? Anyway. And then my favorite, probably my most embarrassing ShmooCon moment ever, just so we're all on the same page here. This is not the question you ask when you're standing in front of, I don't know, several thousand people and you're trying to see if your microphone's on. Okay. You ask, is my microphone on, or you say test 1, 2, 3. You do not say, am I hot? I died a little that day. Maybe more than a little that day. Yeah, it was a bad day. It was, yeah. Anyway, very, very, very embarrassing, not good word choices on my part in that moment. It was funny, I will grant you that, but it was a little hard to recover for the minute or two after I said it, because I had not actually realized what I said until the audience started to react, right? Because obviously my mic was on, so you know, it was a problem. Additionally, here's another one. When I say that delivery matters, I'm just gonna let you, I can kind of read it to you. Bruce texts me, just got a call from Waste Management about our trash pickup in Gettysburg. Hello, this is an important message from Waste Management. We hope you're staying safe out there in the weather. And then there's Bruce. What other hazards are there? I want to see the list they have. Godzilla, the apocalypse, the zombie horde. Like, I mean, yeah, anyway. So, not only do your words matter, but obviously delivery matters as well. Speaking of my husband. when we want to choose our words wisely, we should choose our words wisely. Here's a little exchange with Jenny sitting in the back. She's talking about, she recently had a stay where she couldn't see anything outside of her window. So she, another friend of ours did have a good view, and she says, at least you do have a view. I couldn't see anything. And Bruce says, have you tried being taller? Little stink eye from Jenny for that one, right? So, again, word choice, word intent. And of course, the intent here was to make Jenny laugh and get some stink eye, so I think it worked. Okay. There's nothing to say on this slide. We're going to keep going. Growth for 4. All right, so this is part of the day, or part of the dance where we slow things down. We're going to get a little emo for a second. There's no music yet. It's cool. We're good. Okay, so words have changed me. I think that there's been a few moments in my life that have been, there's been a lot of moments in my life that have been really pivotal, but there's been a few moments and some key words that have happened that have been really kind of changing or life-changing for me, and I'm going to share a few of those with you. This first one, again, I told you about my 5th grade year. Mr. Bauer, we had 2 5th grade teachers. Mr. Bauer was one of those, Glacier Valley Elementary in Juneau, Alaska. He was actually not my 5th grade teacher, but they basically co-taught, and so I was in his classroom all the time. But he had this phrase, and I use this phrase all the time. My kids have grown up with this phrase, but this phrase it's been a foundation of my entire life since I've heard this phrase, and it's only boring people get bored. Okay, so sometimes I say this and people are like, what does that even mean? Think about it. Only boring people get bored. It just means that it's perspective, right? So it's this first card on that last slide, perspective. I don't get bored often because I just always find something to do, right? It's changed how I've looked at what's going on in my life and what I'm choosing to do with my time, or how I view what my time is, right? So I'll leave you with that. Think about it. If you start using this phrase, if you use it with your kids, I want to know, because this one sticks with you. It kind of crawls under your skin and it sits there for a while. Eventually comes back out, I promise. All right, another moment. My dad to my grandfather on October 20th. I was really sick in high school, and as I started to recover, one of the mitigations was that I left my home state. I actually went to live with my grandparents in Tacoma, Washington for a time, just to change my environment. And I ended up staying there a little bit longer because my grandfather was getting sicker and sicker. He was a survivor of the Bataan Death March, he was a member of the Filipino Army, then joined the American Army. He was a cook in the American Army for many, many years, and his health was never the same since then. So he had been on dialysis for many years. His health was failing, and I decided to stay an additional period of time to help just driving, because he was the driver. My grandmother didn't drive, so I stayed down about an additional year just to help out with things that they needed in their household. My dad had flown down to visit me, and my grandfather's health was particularly bad in the moment. And he was talking to my grandfather the night before my dad was set to fly back up to Alaska, and I was sitting in the other room, and I overheard them. And what I heard my dad say to my grandfather was, he was asking him if he was tired. And my grandfather was telling him that he was tired, and that but he didn't want to go, that he didn't want to leave, because he was worried about my grandmother. And what my dad told my grandfather is that it was okay if he needed to go, and that we would always take care of my grandmother. Well, my grandfather died the next day, right? So as my dad was at the airport boarding his plane, we ended up taking my grandfather to the hospital, and he died a few hours later. And this has always stuck with me, that I always felt that my grandfather was able to leave because he had the peace of knowing that somebody had actually told him that my grandmother would be okay. Now, years and years later, and many of you might know this already, my grandmother actually came to live with Bruce and I, and we had her for 3 years, as my parents did as well. So we fulfilled that promise. We took care of her until she passed away at the age, she was what was she, like 103 months or something? I mean, she lived to be over 100 years old. She was born during a pandemic, died during a pandemic. She had a very, very long life, and she was cared for until her dying day. So that was a very important moment for me. And then my father-in-law. So this is in 1996. Our oldest son had just been born, Taryn. And so sorry, Bruce, but Bruce and I were at odds and had been at odds for a while. And against all advice, I mean, I needed to talk to somebody, and I, talked to my folks, but, of course my parents were gonna be perpetually on my side, and I needed perspective, I needed something. So against literally all advice, I decided to call my father-in-law. And he told me two very important things. And it turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made. And he started with, if we go back to those words that I had flashed earlier, he started with the thing that gave me acceptance. The very first thing he said to me after I explained what was happening, he says, Heidi, I'm gonna tell you two things. He says, first, we love you very much. That was the very first thing he said to me. And I was like, I just immediately felt relief, because there are moments in your time when you need to know who's on your side and who has you in their heart, and that was one of those moments. And Bruce is the youngest of 6. I was actually ended up not being the last one married into the family. There's a whole big long story there. But at the time, I thought I was the last one married into the family, and I didn't know where I stood. We were the black sheep because we got married so young. I just didn't know. But he said those words to me, and I just immediately felt way, way calmer, right? Like, okay. This is cool. Like, this is not gonna fall apart on me in the ways I thought it was. And then he said, second, he says, and this is very important too, boys can be very dumb. And this is facts, right? So I was like, oh, okay. And all of a sudden, like, I just felt so much better. Like, this was like, I was like, oh, cool, right? And he's saying this about his own kid. So, again, things that stay with you, things that make you feel good, things that help you along. And my father-in-law was a very brilliant, brilliant man, and I can never thank him enough for these two phrases. Now, I went on to have 3 boys, so, there you go. Speaking of which, our first child, Taryn. Taryn was, Taryn was nonverbal until they were 4 years old. And so nonverbal is an actual kind of diagnosis, right? It doesn't mean that you're mute, it just means that you really don't talk. Taryn had less than 10 words until the age of 4. He was diagnosed with PDD-NOS, which is pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified. Now, this was, at the time, kind of a sub-threshold autism diagnosis. It actually no longer exists. Most of those diagnoses have now been just rolled up into a single diagnosis of ASD. Additionally, at the time, we were told Taryn would outgrow the diagnosis. Arguably, he kind of sort of has. He still has some of the hallmarks of what we saw at that age. Taryn is now 26 and doing very well for himself. But at the time, he literally, he had 10 words. Most of them were unintelligible to most people except me. We used picture boards, we used sign language, and we used sounds to communicate. The reason why I'm bringing this up to you is because this is where I'm going to admit to you that while we're talking about words today, I fully understand that words are words, but what we're really talking about, and what I want to make sure that you're aware, is we're talking about communication, and that I know that communication transcends actual words on paper, right? So this is just my little caveat to all of you. Taryn did eventually start talking. In fact, when his sibling was born, he kind of, within about 3 weeks' time, started talking in complete sentences. So a switch was flipped, and this is one of the first things he really started saying. He said, hi. As he said to everybody everywhere we went, hi, my name is Taryn. This is baby Robert. He's cute. And he would say this everywhere we went, to everyone we met. This is a phrase. I mean, he said this all the time. And Taryn, to this day, he's very funny, he's very witty, but he's very literal. So to him, this was all facts, right? This was just facts. And that's how he's approached all his life. Here's just another quick little funny story about Taryn. We have a neighbor who, actually, she ends up being really funny in our life, but Alyssa, she used to be somebody we'd carpool quite frequently with, and Taryn, she had taken Taryn to Scouts, I believe it was, one time, and she was waiting around afterwards, and she was waiting to ask a question of one of the leaders at the meeting. And so Taryn's standing with her, and they're, like following the leader around to ask this question. And eventually Taryn taps her on the shoulder, and he's like, Miss Alyssa, I think if you want to ask your question, you're going to have to actually talk to him. This is my literal child, literally, you're going to have to say the words if you want to communicate, right? So that's Taryn for you. Additionally, he's very witty, but again, very factual. So when he left to go to college, I'm sitting on the couch and I'm having that typical mom moment, like, did I screw up your life? How much did I fuck you up? There it is, there's the first one. How much did I mess you up? And I turned to him and I said, Taryn, did we fuck you up? How bad did we do? And he says to me, well, if you did, Mom, you got 2 more chances to get it right. That's my son. All right, so again, you are never allowed to touch my slides again.
Sorry.
So, Bobby, baby Robert. Bobby is beginning their gender journey and starting to reveal their gender journey to us. This has been a long process. There's been a lot of things that have gotten in the way of this, of them being able to pursue this journey as early as they would like to. They had heart surgery last year. A couple other things have kind of prevented them being able to pursue this in the manner or as quickly as they would like to, but they're starting to do that now. And of course, we support this wholeheartedly. We will always be there for our kids. But I still get their words wrong. I get them wrong frequently. This is mostly out of habit. A lot of it's because I tend to tell a lot of stories about my kids, and those stories happened in the past, right? And so when you're talking about the past, you're thinking about who that person was in the past, and it's just by habit that it comes out. The good news is my kids have a lot of compassion for me as their mother. They know that I support them, and so I get a lot of forgiveness. It's still not right. We're going to talk about the importance of words, but some of the most important words you can get right are other people's words, right? It's important. And so I apologize to my kids frequently, often, all the time. This is one of the things I actually have backed off on apologizing for, and I just correct it. I've talked to my kid about this one a lot, so they know where I stand, and I just work hard to make it better. My kid is amazing. They're working hard to, see, I just did it again. They're working hard to finish their master's in music education. They want to work with, currently, their passion right now is working with special ed kids in a music program. So that's where they're interning right now. Bobby, I'm gonna do something really quick and I'm hopeful that this works. Bobby, I was in one of my GT teachers from middle school got diagnosed with terminal cancer. This is a number of years ago now. And some of my, two of my middle school friends, well, I've known them since elementary school, and through high school, but they reached out to me, and these two are, they're absolute best friends, but they knew how much this teacher had meant to all of us as we grew up. So they had reached out to me and said, hey, we're gonna go visit Barb, because we all grew up and we got to call her by her first name. That was really weird, right? We're gonna go visit Barb and we think you should come with us. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. Thank you for inviting me. Of course I will come. And it happened to be over Mother's Day. And And so I went, I joined them for a quick 2-day visit to see Barb, and Bobby sent me a gift on Mother's Day, and it was this song, Dear Happy by Dodie. I don't know if any of you have heard this, but what's really unique about this is I'm going to play just a little clip of it for you. Everything you hear in this clip is Bobby. All of the music, all of the vocals, all the harmonies, everything is Bobby. The sound quality isn't great. He didn't have the best equipment. They didn't have the best equipment to do the recording. They only had one set of headphones. It's not super balanced, but I cannot tell you how much this meant to me, especially when you read the words in the situation that I was in. So hopefully,
I missed you dearly, but I was nearly there, forever at last together. Is all completing, is even meeting a healthy idea, or am I getting too near? Don't try to fight it, I'm here for the night, and I'll be waiting for you until we meet again.
anyway, so that, I mean, you can imagine me receiving that while I'm visiting this teacher that meant so much to me, and I got to play it for her, and that trip ended up being really, really special. She died 2 weeks later, so that was an incredible moment that I got to see her one more time. Anyway, so moving on, Daxton is our third child. I don't even know what to say about Daxton. Daxton is full of what we like to call Daxtonisms. Most of these are from when Daxton was about 3 to 4 years old, right? But I guess the story here is that, and I know we're almost done, folks, so don't worry, but what you can see here, Daxton was born so much later than his siblings that he grew up with not only Bruce and I as parents, but 2 older siblings as parents. My parents lived with us. He grew up with a lot of influences, and I think it's, so he is literal, witty, a total smartass, but just a joyful and happy child. So Daxton also had a lot of speech issues, and so didn't like to say words that he thought he couldn't pronounce. So this one cracks me up. Didn't want to say it out loud, but then said it out loud anyway, right? Like, this is how, child brains work. He corrects my grammar in the second one, which I think is really funny, right? This third one harkens back to the only boring people, but he, lets me know that if you don't have electronics, you'll also get bored, right? Because, well, I mean, when you're 4, that's probably true, I guess. I mean, maybe he was 5. I don't think that he had full electronics still in my household. Of course he did. Who knows? And then this last one. This one's given people pause, but I actually find this one really funny. So he was probably about 3, okay? So Dax was freaking out about the move, so we had just moved to a new house and all the chaos of the last 2 weeks. He overheard me and came over to make a correction. I'm not freaking out, points outside, I'm freaking in. Right? So this is the literalness of children. And this has just been Daxton. He still will make jokes like these. He knows they're jokes now, right? But this is who Daxton is. Just continuous joy and an incredible gift in our lives. So words are gifts, right? The Blanchards, who many of you might know, Jackie and Jason Blanchard. Jackie's one of the organizers for B-Sides Charm. Jason, these days, has a pretty large presence with Black Hills Gold and does a bunch of resume building and stuff online, so you may have heard. Anyway, they're really good friends of ours. They live very close to us. They taught me about the gift of words. over the last couple of years, and they actually do this at their birthdays in lieu of gifts. They ask people to come bringing the gift of words. It's where you sit there and you tell. It's kind of like the living wake idea, but slightly different. And and I really love it. It's telling people. Sometimes it's with a theme, like telling people what they mean to you. Sometimes it's giving them a challenge that you'd like to see them complete in the next year. It could be anything you want. Here's an example of a gift of words I sent their daughter just by text for her birthday one year. I made this up really quick just as a graphic, and I just sent it to her. It's actually I had to do it because when I did Jason's gift of words, I inadvertently left out Susie in his gift because I forgot there was an S in Jason's name. It was kind of a funny thing because sometimes I forget how to spell Jason. I don't know. But anyway, it's a really neat idea, and it has a tremendous amount of impact on the person who receives those words, right? You are doing great. I love this. This has become one of my favorite things. In fact, somebody handed me a "You're Doing Great" card. Thank you, Q, right before my talk. This dates back to, it was the ShmooCon right after COVID, and I was up on stage doing the opening, I think it was the opening talks, and I was really struggling because everybody had shown up. Everybody was amazing. My staff was being so incredible, and I was just like an emotional wreck. And one of my staff members just brought me a piece of paper and said, "You're doing great," and put it on the podium while I was speaking. Of course, I cried then even harder, but it was a very touching moment for me. And later on, I actually found this book called "You're Doing Great," and I gifted it to all my staff. It's become very much a ShmooCon thing. Another gift of words I've received this year as we're heading into the last ShmooCon is I've received so many people coming up to me and telling me the stories of what ShmooCon has meant to them over the years, which I just had no idea the impact it has had on the community, and so that has been a tremendous gift. And then my husband, who is, one of the reasons I hate speaking is he is such a gifted orator, and I almost feel like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be compared to Bruce. But despite the fact that he has that gift, that's actually not the gift he gives me. The gift he gives me is he listens to all my words and lets me take them back. So that's the gift that Bruce gives me. Okay, what about my words? We're a few slides away from the end. I've been told my words are gold, right? We went over that one. I've been told my words are kind, my words bring perspective, that my words are helpful, that my words show diplomacy and pragmatism. I'm a very pragmatic person. I've also had my words impact somebody so much that my words were actually then gifted back to me in a way that meant a tremendous amount to me. I actually have this hanging in my office now. So those were my words that got printed and gifted back to me. It meant a lot to me. I had a really hard time making this slide. I didn't want to make it, and Bruce told me I had to. And I said, well, why do I have to put in a slide about my words? And he said, well, Heidi, you're very giving of your words, so you should put that slide in there. And I said, Bruce, that just makes it sound like I talk a lot. I think it does. But the thing is, I make a lot of mistakes with my words, I really do. And I do a lot of work to continuously get better with them. And that's really where we're gonna sort of end this, is with my challenge to all of you. Come on, click, click, click. So I'm gonna just pause for a quick beat. We're almost done. I want you to look at this slide. So when I was arriving at the end of this, developing this talk, and I was kind of poking through my phone, again, I'm a collector of words. I just take pictures of things. I save them off the internet. And I was poking through my phone and I found this. I've not been to Indiana since, I don't know, but probably drove through it 20 years ago, but somebody must have sent this to me. I might have grabbed it off of Facebook. I have no idea. I found this picture and I was like, that's it. That's exactly what I'm kind of arriving at. This is almost exactly what I'm trying to say. So I popped it on this slide. We're gonna come back to this. All right, one more game. The word is whole. For two. You can ask me to spell it.
Would you spell it, please?
No.
There you go. Good job.
Ah, damn it. So sorry.
That one wasn't my fault.
That one wasn't your fault. The others were. I just can't read. There we go. Okay, milk, final answer. Sorry, that was all me, but that's okay. Okay, so in lieu of making a whole, I'm going to ask you to take responsibility for the energy you bring, for the words you say, for the way you act. Because you matter, your community matters. So when I was looking for an image just like yesterday to put on this slide, I went looking through this stack of cards that I have that Bruce had given to me because he felt that the words on those cards reminded him of me. And I found this card and I was like, well, that looks an awful lot like that other picture I'd found that I'd had in my phone for like 4 years that I had only looked at once and then completely forgotten about. So I went and I Googled Dr. Taylor. Turns out she works at Indiana. You know, I had no idea. So this is where I give props to her for getting in my brain subconsciously and inspiring me to talk about all of this. I had no idea that she was, you know, waving around in my head, so we're gonna give her some kudos. She's there, she was there. I had no idea she was related to that sign until I Googled her yesterday. So that's kind of cool, and you know, it's cool how that happens in your life and those connections happen. I kind of love that. My last little charge here is, you know, if you want to be heard, you have to listen. So please exercise that part of your brain as well. All right, so we're done. Some last words. I always tell my staff, I tell this with every volunteer group I work with, I tell it to my children, lead with kindness. Those are Heidi's words of wisdom. Come play Codenames with me. I brought my Codenames kit. I do have my Codenames Village sign with me. I'm gonna co-opt a table somewhere, Russ, if you don't mind. We do play by Heidi and Noy's rules. I'll explain what those are when you come visit. If I taught you how to play the game already, you're already playing it right. I am always blue, and centaurs do wear helmets. That's it.